Oh, it's recording now.
Woo!
So
we should keep this in for the laugh. Hello and welcome to our first episode of Stop the Lights with Olivia and Ciaran. You may have guessed I'm Olivia.
And I'm Ciaran. Hello. Welcome to Stop the Lights. It's happening, Olivia.
I know.
Look at us. We something left the chat.
we actually thought of an idea and followed through on it.
It's actually happening. This is one of those things where you're kind of going over a pint and you'd be like, oh, let's do a Formula One podcast. And you're going, yeah, I'm sure we will. And now look, we're actually doing one.
I know, just as the season ends.
This is your bad planning again, I think. This is what's happening here. Although, allow us to be your friend during the off-season. And we've only got like 88 more days as we record this now until the cars are back on track in an official race again. So, not that far away now because the season is nearly 12 months long. You know, that's what it feels like.
Which is insane because like when I was a kid watching it, like it was barely getting into October, let alone now like the second week of December, which is wild.
It is crazy. So shall we kind of first of all start off and say why we are Formula One fans? I've been watching Formula One since I was about 6 years old. My mum used to watch it. Used to watch it in her bed together. And I have to say, I was not a Ferrari fan. Michael Schumacher was absolutely winning everything. Hated anything to do with red, hated anything to do with Ferrari. I was a Mika Hakkinen super fan. When he was crying after crashing out of a race and he was behind the barrier crying, I was like weeping in my house as like an 8-9-year-old. I was like, what is happening? This is so sad. And of course, like obviously I do broadcasting and I love Murray Walker. He was the reason why I loved Formula One. I used to like the 12 laps that used to get in qualifying before the hour-long sessions because there was a lot of nothing happening where you were listening to Murray Walker just talk for that length of time. But then you're watching these guys going 300 kilometers an hour around a ridiculous circuit that's hard. I was hooked from the very first time I ever saw a Formula One car race down a circuit. I loved it.
Yeah, and I just love how you admitted that, you know, you were in bed with your mom.
Yes, I was. Now.
It was the way you phrased that could be misconstrued.
I was a child, Olivia, right? Very much a child. I actually think one of the earliest Formula One memories I have is I was 7 and like Princess Diana had just died. And we were like we were up early watching that and there happened to be a race on like soon after. And that was one of the first times I ever watched Formula One was when Princess Diana had died.
Wow.
Yeah.
I actually do remember watching that race. I couldn't tell you what race it was, but I do remember that's why I was also up early and the Sky News guy was just like, Diana, Princess of Wales is dead. And I just screamed up the stairs to Mom going like, Mom! And she was like, what, am I missing the start of the race? I was like, no, Diana's dead!
So where was your first exposure to Formula One then?
My mum, she was an absolute diehard fan herself, and so I started watching it from whenever she could watch TV kind of thing. The first season that I remember watching was 1996 when Damon Hill won it, and I was already now listeners, you're going to realise that Ciaran and I disagree on a lot of things.
Well, I'm right and Olivia's wrong, mostly.
We'll see about that. I was already a Michael Schumacher stan. I was all for Schumi at the time, and Mum was very much a team Damon Hill. Now, that probably was assisted by the fact that he lived in Killiney at the time, and my mum worked in the Statoil garage on Rochetown Avenue, and he used to go in there and get his petrol. So she was like always seeing him all the time, him and Eddie Irvine and Eddie Jordan and that. So she was always like very much a fan of them, whereas I was just like, no, it's Michael Schumacher or nothing kind of thing. Yeah. And so yeah, the first season I remember watching from start to finish was when Damon Hill won it, and then of course the infamous, you know, he got sacked from Williams straight away after winning the championship for them, and then Jacques Villeneuve won the following year, and then it was the Mika Hakkinen era. So I did kind of switch a wee bit to Kimi Räikkönen when he first started. I always remember when they were called Sauber when he started, wasn't it?
Yeah, they were, yeah.
Yeah, in that like greeny, pinky kind of multicolored car. And I just always thought that he was like the coolest thing I'd ever seen. Just the way that he drove, the way that his attitude and everything like that, I just thought was great.
World champion Kimi Räikkönen. The most iconic thing he ever did was eat an ice cream. I mean, he got out of his car and he's like, I'm not getting back in that car. I'm done. Eating an ice cream in the garage. And that was the best thing he ever did. He was not a media personality.
No, but you know what? But he made it fun for those of us watching because he gave like zero shits. Like that was what made it fun. I also love when I don't know whether he had to retire the car or whether he crashed out of Monaco and then suddenly you just see him and he's already on the yacht in the jacuzzi like and just chilling. Like that's just the kind of character that he was and kind of still is as well. Like I still follow him online and there's still some Kimmyisms that come up every now and again, which is quite fun. But yeah, so I went and I think I was a Vettel stan. Once Red Bull kind of really came into their own, I really started going for the Red Bulls.
So what you're saying is you were a Ferrari fan when Ferrari were doing well. Then when Ferrari started to fall off the cliff, you moved onto Red Bull and you're now a Red Bull fan because Red Bull started doing well?
Well,
Are you a glory hunter?
I will say I was a Ferrari fan before they started winning. So like I survived
because
through...
I mean the underdog Ferrari, of course. It's hard.
The underdog of the 90s, yes. Well, they were. Like,
oh yes, hundreds of million budget, but underdog. Yeah, okay.
Well,
fair
Michael
enough.
didn't win a championship until God. Had Alonso even won his 2 after Hakkinen, and then it was Michael's era. Yeah, come on. It actually, I was following the sport a long time before he actually won a championship with Ferrari. So I stuck it out. Don't you be giving me any of that lip.
So then you
Excuse you.
Then you were a Red Bull fan. You continue are a Red Bull fan. You've got a Red Bull Christmas tree ornament and everything.
I do. I actually have.
Tree.
I have. So I'm bougie. I have 2 trees. One of them just isn't up yet, and we have the red ones on the tree in the front room because the color scheme matches with that, and then the one in the back room is blue and silver, so the blue ones will go on that. I also have a Red Bull Racing hat. I have a Red Bull Racing Christmas jumper. I have a shirt, like a button-up shirt, which was sent from Australia because my friend's dad got it and he didn't like it, so she sent it to me for Christmas. Thank you, Catherine. So yeah, I've kind of been like mostly a Red Bull stan. I did go through a phase of being a McLaren stan for quite a while, but just with certain things that Ron Dennis started doing towards the end of his tenure there, it just wasn't really sitting right with me. Like when Hamilton actually started racing, I was one of the people screaming at the top of their lungs when he overtook the Toyota in the like corner, 6th corner or something like that. I was like, yes, go Hamilton. But then the minute he won, he just flipped a switch and it went from being like the cool kind of like calm, collected, really polite kind of guy to being like, well, I'm world champion now, so like F all of you. And that again just didn't sit right with me, so I sort of switced to Team Button then for quite a while and back to Red Bull.
That was the greatest year of Formula 1 for me. Was the Braun era. I really don't like though how Formula 1 don't award the drivers and constructors title on television at the track. They do it at the prize ceremony. Bring it. We want to see that. Can we please? Like the closest we got was in Abu Dhabi. They had the 2 team principals, McLaren and Ferrari, stand beside the trophy. And I go, no, can we please award it properly? Like, because Formula 1 is amazing at celebrations. Podiums are iconic. Monza probably being the most iconic podium in the world, right?
Yeah, it is.
But then they go and hide behind closed doors at a prize ceremony for the FIA and you're going, like, there's just something missing about that. At least this year they had Max Verstappen when he won the World Championship. I think he finished 4th or 5th in the race. But they had him actually drive to the end, to the grid again, and he had a placard which said F1 World Champion. Because before that, like, Jenson Button won the World Championship and he parked his car like 7th or 8th.
In Parc Fermé,
And you're going... This just seems so anticlimactic because it was the first time I ever knew that there was a prize ceremony afterwards, because I was like, I'm kind of probably only grown up at that point, and then Martin Brundle was like, and obviously he'll be getting the trophy at the FIA prize ceremony, and I'm like, what? But like the Champions League final not getting a trophy at the end of it, it's silly to me.
Because like no one remembers who won that race, but everyone remembers the pictures of Jenson hugging his dad in his pink shirt and him being thrown up on the shoulders of all the mechanics in the pit box kind of thing, and them nearly smacking his head off the top of the roof. That's what people remember. No one remembers who actually won that race. It's insane to me. But I do remember, and again, listeners can tell me if I'm wrong, I do remember watching that ceremony before. It used to be televised on like maybe Eurosport or something like that.
Yeah. Can we say why the podcast is called stop the lights as well, because obviously it's a very Irish phrase,
It is.
stop the lights. And Olivia has these takes where you literally have to go, Olivia, stop the lights. What in the name of God are you saying? Like, some of the stewarding decisions this year that we have argued about during the races and stuff, and you're going, Olivia, what? No, it should be a penalty. What are you talking about? Of course it's like, no, it shouldn't be. You're literally going, stop the lights. So it's a very Irish phrase where he's literally going, hang on a minute, stop for a second.
We had a list of names that we were going through, and Stop the Lights was the one that we were kind of leaning towards, that we really liked, just because it was quintessentially Irish. This is an Irish podcast, but also, you know, having like the lights reference and whatever would be connected to motorsport. But yeah, since we announced that we were doing this and it was going to be called Stop the Lights, the amount of messages I've had from people to be like, oh my God, are you inviting Paul Mescal on? Purely because during an interview when he was on with Andrew Scott, when they're promoting All of Us Strangers, he and the two of them were talking about stop the lights. Stop the lights. Like, he just kept saying it over and over again in this interview. And it kind of became known as being like a phrase that he uses. Now, I did not see him use this phrase ever again throughout any of the Gladiator 2 stuff. But because he was on that promo trail for Gladiator 2, he was at one of the Grand Prix with Ferrari, and there was a load of clips of him with Charles Leclerc and with Carlos Sainz. We called it Stop the Lights.
It is a quintessentially Irish phrase, and it kind of was motorsport related because of the lights. And there's so many podcasts which are called It's Lights Out, so we decided to not go with that. But I think we do need to talk about what was possibly the most exciting Drivers and Constructors Championship for quite some time, the 2024 Championship, which started all the way back in March. I mean, that's so long ago. But we have Max Verstappen as the 4-time. We won't put an asterisk beside his very first one, right? I'll be nice.
Oh, you can go below with even suggesting that one needs to be put in there.
I'll be nice. Michael Massey, we hardly knew you, right? So, 4-time world champion. I didn't know whether he was going to get over the line this year, up until he had an absolutely amazing drive in Brazil in the wet again. He go from like 16th place,
17th, yeah.
So like, I mean, and you're watching it going, as not a Max Verstappen fan, you're going like, oh, there's nothing you can do but praise this guy for his driving ability here. And then one of the best things that happened this year is that McLaren are once again Constructors champions.
For the first time since 1999.
Incredible. Absolutely incredible. What Zach has done to that team, and we really got to know him in Drive to Survive, and you're kind of going, oh my God, like he's bringing in essentially teenagers as drivers, and you're going, I don't know if this is going to work. Yeah. 2 young drivers, Norris and Piastri, and you're going, oh, I'm not too sure if this is going to work. Oh boy, has it worked. Breakout year for Oscar Piastri. Lando Norris, probably he's still a little bit more growing up to do, Lando Norris, in some of his driving style, technique. But what a year it's been for McLaren, and Papaya rules. And not talking about team orders, actually their team actually rules. So look, I miss the old McLaren Mercedes coloured car that we knew for Lewis Hamilton winning world champions in. I have now turned to a Papaya liking person. I understand that was their original colours, I get it. But I did miss the sleek looking McLaren Mercedes. I suppose it probably looks a little bit too much like a Mercedes car, I suppose.
No, yeah.
But
although they then Mercedes then went for the sort of like black livery and
they went for that originally because of the Black Lives Matter stuff. But then they realised actually it's a lighter paint, so they kept it for a while. And you go, the silver arrows are no longer the silver arrows. But what a season it's been! Like
it's been insane, good, and I think like it started off looking likely it was going to be a very dominant Red Bull season once again, and then suddenly, you know, Max wasn't he? He didn't finish the Australian Grand Prix, or he didn't start the Australian Grand Prix, something like that.
But Max had a bad middle to end of the season.
He did, but I'm talking about the start, when it looked like it was still going to be a very dominant Red Bull season, and then suddenly we kind of moved to Europe after the couple of races at the start, and from about May onwards, it started going a little bit south, and like he had his first pole since, was it Spielberg in Austria, and that was only in Qatar.
Yeah.
Like, that was a big gap. He hadn't won a race for 10 races before he won in Brazil. That was a long wait for us fans. And
it was a brilliant time.
What a time. There was a point where, like, so, like, he never lost the lead because he had started off so strong. He never lost the lead in the championship. But there was a moment when, you know, Norris and Leclerc were getting a bit close, and it was starting to get a bit squeaky bum time. And you and I had this conversation when you were like, I think Norris could clinch this. And I was like, I do like Norris. I think he's a great driver. Piastri has grown on me. I didn't like him purely because he took over the seat from Daniel Ricciardo, and I was a massive Daniel Ricciardo stan, still am. But he has completely grown on me. I think his driving style, his temperament, his humour, I think he's actually just a great driver, and they just make such a great team, himself and Norris as well. But for Norris, he just, I think, needed a little bit more time to cook before he can basically keep the head and focus like Max does when it matters most. Because when things were going wrong for him in Brazil, oh my God, did he lose the head behind that wheel. Yeah. And as much as, look, yes, his quote on the luck was taken out of context, but when you do look at it, it's like, yes, it was luck that the safety car or the red flag came out at the time that it did. But it wasn't his bad luck that he then kept driving the car off the track, kind of thing. And it was those kind of things that made you think, okay, he clearly needs a bit more time to get his head in the game. I actually thought it was going to be more likely that Leclerc could come up and do a Kimi Räikkönen and beat the two of them.
Yeah, you were tipping Leclerc to kind of like, if Verstappen, it really looked like he may never win a race again this season. It was kind of time where you're going, this guy is...
He hasn't even had a podium!
Yeah, he's struggling here, which made it great for everyone else watching. To be honest, you know, it's one of those things where you're like, oh my God, Formula 1 is exciting, isn't it? Look, Max Verstappen is struggling. I really enjoyed the resurgence of Ferrari, not being a massive Ferrari fan, right? Carlos Sainz, as soon as it was announced that he wasn't getting that seat, a rocket was strapped to him.
Yep.
And he was absolutely stunning. He had a very good season. And he said he's excited to go to Williams. I fear that his excitement will wane when he's fighting for 18th, 19th and 17th place. Look, I know Williams have done quite well this year. You know, you kind of get a couple of Q3 appearances in qualifying and stuff. But 9 times out of 10, they are down at the back end of the grid. And I do think, like Alonso with Aston Martin, when Aston Martin were doing very well, Alonso was very happy. When Aston Martin aren't doing very well, Alonso is a very, very sad boy.
He is. And I think when people were giving out about Max being so aggro to the team when the car wasn't performing, I'm like, hang on a minute. Have we not heard Hamilton on the radio this season? Have we not heard Alonso on the radio in many, many, many seasons? Like, this is what the drivers do. And Max isn't the only one. So when, like, we were talking earlier about, like, the Max versus George drama that just occurred right before the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix, which was, like, tasty. But it kind of made me laugh because he was there being like, oh, suddenly like half of Red Bull are sending their CVs out to other teams. And it's just like, well, like, it was also like, that's the time of year when people do that.
Changes happen, yeah.
Like, that is just the time of year that the CVs go out. Guess what? A lot of Mercedes people were doing the same because Lewis is leaving. Like, come on. So I just kind of found that quite humorous anyways. But yeah, it's just been jam-packed. It's been dramatic. It's been like... That stop and go penalty for Norris, I was gobsmacked over. But like, it is in the rules.
Right,
but it was still just like,
so do you remember when the stop go penalty was the penalty?
It was the standard,
right?
yeah.
It was the standard penalty, and then it just kind of went away.
It died.
They started doing 5 seconds, 10 seconds. Martin Brundle...
Drive-through penalties, things like that. Yeah.
Martin Brundle clarified on the last race in Abu Dhabi, when they were getting 10-second penalties for causing a collision. Used to be 5 seconds. Apparently, in the driver's briefing beforehand, they had requested harsher punishment for causing a collision penalties. That's why the two of them, the Piastri one and the Verstappen one, Piastri went into the back of Colapinto. I still don't really understand what happened there. Wasn't paying attention, I don't think, and just
foot slipped off the brake and onto the gas. I don't know.
He got lucky that his front end wasn't more damaged. Verstappen absolutely deserved that penalty. There was no need to go down that front row.
Even I agree with that. That was his fault. It was almost like you could see that he was turning.
Yeah. Yeah.
but the car was just still going straight.
David Croft on commentary he laid into him. He was like, you're already world champion. It makes no difference to how you're going to finish in the championship. Like, don't put your car down there. I was like, wow, like David Croft is really leaning in on him here. Martin Brundle was kind of the similar. But the stop-go penalty, I was so surprised. I was like, because Martin Brundle keeps going on, he's like, that's a 37-second penalty.
Yeah.
Like, what? It's not 10.
Because it's a long pit lane as well.
Because you can't do anything to the car. At least with a 10-second penalty, you can drive in the pit lane, stop for 10 seconds, then service the car.
Yep.
But you can't do it with a stop-go penalty.
Nope.
Go in, stop, straight out again. And even the drive-through penalty is like, oh, okay, that's like 20-odd seconds. But 37 seconds seemed very, very harsh.
And you have to serve it during the race, and so even if it's on the final lap, you have to pit.
And
that's
I think it's
just it.
I think it's within 3 laps.
Yeah.
I think the
It's
stop-go
2
penalty,
to 3
isn't it?
laps or something like that.
Whereas the other penalty is if you don't serve it, it's added on to your race time at the end. You know, that kind of thing. But yeah, I was surprised.
That's just a time penalty as opposed to like, we're just going to ruin your race here.
But it was so shocking that like the commentary team were like, it's a stop-go penalty for Norris. And it did, like, it ruined the race, and it ruined Norris's race, obviously. Very nearly ruined McLaren's chances of clinching the Constructors' Championship. Let's talk about the final race for a second. Right now, I don't actually ever really remember the Constructors' Championship being the be-all and end-all. I understand that there was nothing else to play for in this particular race, right? But Sky definitely built it up as like the be-all and end-all. Even them bringing the trophy out to the grid beforehand, I'm like, was this really that big of a deal beforehand?
Yeah, but like, I think, again, Drive to Survive has kind of helped us come to know the teams as a whole, as opposed to just the drivers.
Team principals
so like,
as well.
as much as I would have known like Jean Todt, and I would have known of Ron Dennis, there we go. I don't think I could tell you another like late 90s, early 90s.
Eddie Jordan.
Eddie Jordan, and sorry, yes, of course, Eddie Jordan. But I was also thinking of your man from Benetton, Flavio Briatore.
Oh, there you go. Yes,
I knew it would come to me.
Oh, he had a ban as well, didn't he?
He did, yeah. After
Renault thrown into walls and stuff. Oh, and he's back now. Like, he's back on grids and all.
He's working with Alpine. I think it was him that gave the boot to Ocon or something like that. So I read. I digress. But yeah, like, you've got to know more of the team principals the more you watch the Grand Prix and the more you watch the sport. But Drive to Survive was just like, here they are.
Yeah.
And suddenly you know all about them. So like,
thank you, Gunther Steiner.
Oh, Gunther Steiner. What a gent. I got to meet him last year just before it came out that he was leaving Haas. So I was devastated for him. But like that, you just, they get interviewed a lot more now. What?
Can we say that it kind of worked? I mean, like,
because of when he left, we don't know if it would have still worked if he was there.
I was really upset when they let him go. Haas have had a pretty good year.
They did.
And I was like, how dare they get rid of Gunther Steiner? I mean, we need to see him and Gene having conversations. You know, we need to see him giving out to Kevin Magnussen for slamming doors and, you know, just everything that happened when he was team principal there. But it's kind of worked.
But the thing is, we don't, because of where the stage of where the production for the car would have been, we don't know if that would have changed if he was still there. You just don't know, unfortunately, because of the way that it went down. But yeah, like I said, like you get to know like the rivalry, like the Toto versus Christian stuff is like pass the popcorn. Like when he's just like, oh no, we need to change the car. It's like, you've got the problem. You change your effing car. Like, that's an iconic moment in F1. So yeah, because they've become personalities in their own right, then it makes sense for the Constructors' Championship to have a bit more weight to it, because people are now more interested in that as well as the Drivers' Championship.
And they're actually starting to talk about prize money now, which they never did before.
Yes,
so
this has been the case for as long as I've been watching F1, is that you get money depending on where you finish.
So where
you finish is
thing.
Yeah, like, but it makes sense. Like that's why everyone's just like, oh, even if we're battling for 5th and 4th, there's money involved because you get more money if you finish in fourth.
It's like 20 to 30 million difference between, finishing in fourth or fifth. And it does make it, especially to Williams when their drivers keep crashing their cars.
Yep.
Let's talk about some negatives from the 2024 season, right? They're the positives. Sergio Perez, for me,
oh my gosh,
unfortunately, has to be one of the biggest negatives of 2024. I fear for him in 2025. I don't think he's going to be in a Red Bull seat. Liam Lawson will probably be in that seat. I actually think Sergio Perez is going to be kept on as a Red Bull something driver. He'll probably be doing show runs. I just can't imagine him being next to near a test car, next to near a simulator, doing anything for Red Bull. I think he has just done such a bad job this year, and I fear that he's done. But they're going to hold on to him.
Well, we had that rumour that he needed to finish, in order to keep his contract for 2025, he needed to finish within 100 points of Max Verstappen.
Yeah.
That has not happened.
No.
Now, whether or not that is actually the case, we don't actually know.
Yeah, they never confirmed.
They never confirmed it. Yeah. But if you heard him speak at the end of the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix, he was so resigned. And he was just like, well, look, as far as I know, I have my seat, but we'll see how talks go during the off season. And a lot of people heard that and they went, okay, so he's just waiting for his money. And essentially, it's going to be similar to what happened with Ricciardo when he left McLaren, which is they had to buy him out of his contract. Because at the end of the day, he has signed a contract and they have to kind of honour it in some way.
Yeah.
But like, if they offer him enough money to get out of it, then who knows what's going to happen. What I find interesting is that it's not Liam Lawson in the car for the testing, which we'll get into in another episode because there's so much to talk about in that as well. But the post-season testing is kicking off this week, and it's Yuki Tsunoda who is actually driving the Red Bull. And a lot of people have been wondering, why isn't he being the one tipped to be the one getting into the Red Bull? And it's like, well, at the end of the day, Yuki, when it was the Yuki versus Ricciardo, yes, Yuki had more points overall, but in the actual like one-on-one battles between the two of them, Ricciardo was actually slightly ahead. But Ricciardo cost more money because he had a higher fee as a driver. And I think that if they were looking at cost-cutting measures, that might have been an indicator. And of course, because he is such an expensive driver and he is I don't want to say veteran, but he has been in the sport longer, he should be doing better theoretically.
Brings in a lot of money.
And brings in a lot of money.
That's...
And also Yuki also brings a lot of money in sponsorship.
Yeah.
So I think
Yuki
that
brings
was
in a massive amount of money.
And I think that's the key. I don't think he has the consistency and the temperament for the Red Bull seat. A bit like, remember when Kvyat got tapped to go into the Red Bull seat and then kind of didn't really do much with it. I think that's what would happen with Tsunoda. I think Lawson is a better shout. If he hadn't have crashed so much in the last two races, I nearly would have said Colapinto could have been with a shout in that as well.
I think he started making rookie mistakes, and that's not going to fly with Christian Horner, right? So he did very well in the first couple of races. Very excited actually to see Oliver Berman full time in Formula 1 next year, because he did an amazing job. But Colapinto, he just made a couple of rookie mistakes, and that, look, everybody felt for Williams when they were crashing, because it was very public that they had no money left. Yeah. They had no parts. They were flying parts, and you're going...
they were not racing cars because they couldn't afford to
they didn't race Albon, and actually I had figured that Colapinto was going to be the one to not race that race, and then it was Albon.
They were going to give the car to Alex. Yeah.
So I think that was a little slap on the wrist to Albon to be like, no, you crashed, so you are now.
And also because they didn't race Sargent in order to give him a car earlier on in the season, so they couldn't do it twice in one season.
I completely forgot about Logan Sargent.
I know.
God Almighty. And like, there's something.
Bless him, he tried.
There's something about a North American accent in Formula 1 that you kind of goes, oh, God bless you. You're going to try your best.
Who was the other North American driver? Like, not Canadian, just like American that they had. Was his name Scott Speed?
Yes, there was. Yes, you're absolutely right.
Oh,
Speed.
Pulled that one out of my ass.
100%. And what a name.
Amazing name. And he was one of the slowest drivers you'd ever see in your life.
Yes. And I don't think anyone will ever be as bad as Mazepin. I think, God love him. He tried. But Williams, I think it was like nearly $4 million collective damage, and then plus Colapintos as well after that. So maybe whatever.
I like
5 or
James
6
Voles. He's got a good head for numbers, but I think if the bag is empty, there's not much else you can do.
I digressed for a second. I diverted. Let me go back to the Red Bull seat that is not vacant at the minute, but probably will be vacant. Is that a poison chalice seat? Alex Albon, super driver, didn't work. Right? Didn't work when he was in that Red Bull seat. Is the car just too designed for Max Verstappen? And how many years do they decide, do you know what, the constructors is not worth it. We can come third for a couple of years, which, I mean, they didn't even come second this year, remember? So it was third.
Not even second, it was
third. So Ferrari came second, so third. How many years do they sacrifice the constructors to give Max Verstappen some more championships? I have a theory, you have a theory too, on how long Max Verstappen is staying in the sport. There's no way, if Max Verstappen stays in Formula 1 for the next 5 years, that there is not a Dutch Grand Prix. We have a Dutch Grand Prix next year, and that is it.
Yes, and actually something that Oscar Piastri was saying is that we can't keep forgetting about the European Grand Prix because it is such a big region for the sport, and yet so many of them seem to be getting axed. Like, we've already lost Nuremberg. Like, that was always a massive race on the calendar, and I can't even tell you when the last one was. And now from 2026 we will not have Zandvoort, which, having met people who have gone there, have said it's an absolutely spectacular venue. It's a great race. It's really well organized, and like, it is usually, even from watching at home, it's usually a great race as well. Max Verstappen's contract ends in 2026, and with having the baby, it's 2025 or 2026? No, 2026, I think.
2026. One more year. He's got 2 years. He's got 2 years left.
2 years, I think.
Left. But yes, baby on the way.
Baby on the way, and you know, the contract's coming up, and he keeps saying about how he has such an interest in sim racing, and he'd love to get a team that takes sim racers and puts them into the car, a la Gran Turismo, the film. So, you know, you do wonder, because he does say that he's not going to be doing this until he's well into his 30s or 40s, like the likes of Hamilton and Alonso. So you do have to wonder, like, are they kind of like, well, we know something that you don't know, and that he's just not going to renew his contract? It's
now, unless the Dutch government were like, look, we're not going to give you any more money, you know, unless, like, because that's a massive thing, like, because Ireland would be a great place to host a Grand Prix, but there isn't. It would be, but there's no way we're giving them money to build all the infrastructure.
But also, we don't have the weather consistency.
Like, if
we suddenly had a dry race, everybody would be like, we brought the wrong tyres.
that is true. But look, we keep going back.
It'll be like Indianapolis that year.
We keep going back to Japan, and there's been years where we haven't had a Japanese Grand Prix qualifying because it's just too wet.
Yeah.
I'm like, surely we're going here at the wrong time or something. But do you think that Red Bull will sacrifice their second driver again?
See, I don't know, because for up until this year, and maybe say the first half of last year as well, Perez was keeping up with Max. He really was. And the balance between the two drivers, it just seemed like the car setup just seemed to suit both of them. And then suddenly it just went absolutely tits up this year.
Yeah, it did.
For Perez. So, like, look, the teams are always going to favour the number one driver. It's just the way of it. And, you know, even in the Hamilton-Rosberg days, they were like the two battling each other, even though the car setup was slightly more in Hamilton's favour.
Rosberg is a world champion.
He is a world champion now.
So, it's like Rosberg won the world title, right? At Mercedes.
And then went, bye, because I'm probably never going to get this again.
But what I'm saying, like, there's no way Sergio Perez ever going to win the world title at Red Bull.
But I think they knew that when they hired him. He has great consistency, but in terms of actually being do you know what? He's kind of like the Eddie Irvine and the Rubens Barrichello of the sport. Because they were both quite consistent in Ferrari, but they were never the number one driver, and they were never likely to win a world title, except for Eddie Irvine when Michael Schumacher broke his leg. And he ended up then being the number one driver and came second in the Drivers' Championship that year. Yeah. It is a case of when you do have a driver that is just reliable and is consistent and is amenable, shall we say.
Yeah.
Could you even say the same thing about Coulthard back when he was in McLaren with Mika?
Yeah, but you see, I think we are now in an era where there is a very defined driver 1 and driver 2. I don't think that was really the case as much 20 years ago.
See, I disagree. I think it was more obvious back then
Really?
because there was a lot more team orders as well. Like, the reason why they got rid of team orders was due to the
horrible
infamous
Ferrari. Let's
incident.
change it on the last corner, and everybody going, "Oh, what's happening here?"
Yeah,
you know?
like that was like, but team orders were a thing throughout. Like Coulthard moved over for Mika on a number of occasions. I'm pretty sure Jacques did the same for Damon in his final year with the team and Williams. So like, it was something that was like, it was always very obvious who was the number one and who was the number two. Whereas now it's a case of like who would you say is going to be the number one driver at Williams next year?
Albon.
Is he?
No, Carlos is going to be there. Oh.
See, that's the thing. Albon has the legacy with them, but Sainz has the track record.
Not with Williams, he hasn't. But I mean, like,
not with Williams, but you know what I mean.
He's a Ferrari driver, I suppose. Like, I mean, you're kind of going, yeah, like, but that's a horrible question. What an absolutely horrible question to pose.
Also, would you say who's the number one driver in Aston Martin? I think that's a good question because let's face it, we all know the number one driver should be Alonso, but is it Alonso?
Alonso doesn't have a dad that's in charge of the team.
But like, that's the thing. Like,
that's the that's the problem there.
But you know what I mean? It does come across a little bit more of like an even playing field. Because even I'd say like Carlos and Charles and Lando and Piastri, it's like, yes, okay, Charles and Lando, they are the number one drivers. But it's a lot more even pegging between the two teammates, you know, that kind of way.
Yeah, but it's so, when you look at, say, McLaren, right, the only reason it's probably split pretty much 50-50 is because Piastri did so well in certain races. And it was only the last two races when Lando Norris wasn't able to win the World Championship where Piastri was like, no, we are no longer trying to get Lando Norris to win the World Championship. It is all about the team. If I'm ahead, I'm ahead kind of scenario.
He actually said that, and he was like, yes, we're starting 1-2. Yes, I would have rather it be the other way around, but as long as we finish in 1-2, that's what matters to the team.
Exactly, 100%. And look, that to me, that's probably where you want your team, because the issue is Formula 1 is a team sport. So Max Verstappen was without his wingman. Like Sergio Perez helped.
He was flying solo.
But Sergio Perez helped him last year.
Yeah.
Right? So this year he didn't have him, and definitely to his detriment didn't have him. You saw how well it worked between Lando Norris and Piastri, also between Leclerc and Sainz as well.
Yep.
You need a good, strong teammate, and I don't think that's going to be Sergio Perez for Max Verstappen.
But is it going to be Liam Lawson? We've seen him be quite aggressive when it comes to Sergio Perez in terms of overtaking manoeuvres and basically just ramming him off the road.
There wasn't there that great thing where he was pictured about 5 or 6 paces behind Christian Horner, and it was very apparent that he was waiting to get a slap on the wrist from Christian Horner.
It's like you are waiting to go into the principal's office kind of thing.
Exactly.
Which, fair. Like, I understand that he's fighting for that seat because let's face it, he is. But like, you don't get it by ramming Perez off the road and costing the team money. Not only your team, because you're now damaging parts in your car, but costing the team that you're trying to take the seat.
Yeah.
Like, costing them money by making Perez crash out of the race. Like, that's why Perez didn't finish the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix, didn't he? Clip. Was it Lawson? I think it was.
Or
no, was it Colapinto?
It was Colapinto, I think.
Okay, I'm wrong then. Not a sentence I'm going to say very often. But it is one of those things of the amount of times that Perez was just like, what the hell is this guy's problem? It's like, the problem is that you're in the car that he wants to be in. He was just slightly too aggressive in certain ways with it. He's the young gun coming in to try and prove himself, and basically two of the old heads were just like, who the F is this guy? Like, he needs to calm down.
One of our off-season topics will have to be whether driver academies are actually a good thing or not, you know, and whether having half the field be affiliated with one team, does that actually affect the team? And I always say that I don't think it's fair that Red Bull have essentially a second team, and it's very easy for them to manipulate that smaller team. I know you could probably say the same for Mercedes and Williams and different teams like that, but they're not actually connected, whereas Red Bull and whatever they're calling themselves now, V-Car, Red Visa, whatever,
I still call them Toro Rosso.
Best name ever. Toro Rosso was so good. Let's just have a Red Bull in a different language. I love that. Let's do that. I really like that. But yeah, that's kind of that's the biggest thing is we're going to have to check out and keep an eye on who gets that Red Bull seat, whether they do the thing they did and start off the season with Perez and then very quickly go, do you know what? We're not having you.
I don't think they will. I think that if Perez is going to go, he's going to be gone. I'd say maybe early January we'll get the news that he's gone. If he's gone. Yeah. Well, look, I think that is enough from us for one episode. Next time we are going to discuss the post-season testing, where we got to see Carlos Sainz in his white, and we got to see, so basically he's white in his white because he's still technically contracted with Ferrari, so he's not allowed to wear any labels. But we have Ocon in his Haas gear, which is quite interesting, and we'll be able to sort of look at the timings and see how does it set us up for the pre-season testing, which will be, is it still in Barcelona next year?
No, they've moved it now, haven't they moved it all to Bahrain, or one of those play, like they literally do it before the Grand Prix, the week before the opening Grand Prix. I think they do it now. And we do next week have to talk about Lewis Hamilton's move from Mercedes to Ferrari, because I remember that news breaking and being just like, are you kidding me? I really like Lewis Hamilton. I really want to talk about him on our next episode.
Because then we can get into it a little bit more as well, because I think that'll be he deserves the time. He does deserve the time, because it was, like I said, it kind of broke the internet last year. But thank you for listening to us ramble.
Yes,
we had a plan, I swear, and we just completely threw it out the window the minute we started talking. But that's kind of what we want this podcast to be. It's going to be just two mates sitting down, shooting the shit, and just having a bit of crack talking about F1. So
exactly like you would with your friends, the exact same way.
Exactly. So if you are enjoying this, then please, like, share, subscribe.
Oh, you've hit hit the podcast things that you have to say. It was like YouTube.
One of us had to.
It was like YouTube one. Hit that bell. Not the YouTube one that they say. And get notified when we post things. Look,
yes, Miss Mojo.
Welcome to Watch Mojo. It would be helpful, in fairness, to like and subscribe. Thank you very much. And
we are just doing this for the love of it. We are not sponsored. There's no ads that we have deliberately put in. There might be ads that the providers or wherever you get your podcasts might have inserted to our episodes.
We do not get any money from those ads, unfortunately. But if also you have any comments or anything like that, you can send them to the Stop the Lights Instagram page.
Yes, we are at Stop the Lights Pod on Instagram, so give us a follow, a like, and if you have any questions or want to send any comments our way, then you can do it there.
That is the best way to do it. And we will be dropping a new podcast hopefully every 2 weeks.
That's the aim.
That is the aim. Christmas may get in the way of that, actually.
We realised that we didn't time this well.
But apart from that, that's really much it. And then there will be Formula 1 news between now and March, and very quickly,
as we learned last year,
very quickly we are going to get into the 2025 season, and I cannot wait.
I can't wait. This was fun.
Yes, Olivia, thank you very much.
Thank you, Ciaran.